Ethan Rivas had never liked crowded spaces, but Aurora Station left him no choice. The station hovered above a gas giant, its massive docking bays filled with ships of all shapes and sizes. Humans, aliens, and hybrids moved about, their voices overlapping in a chaotic hum that seemed to vibrate through the metal floors. Ethan had only come to make a simple supply run. Yet, as he maneuvered past towering crates and hovercarts, he felt the familiar edge of unease he always got in such busy places. He adjusted the strap of his messenger bag, trying to keep it from swinging into someone's leg. His eyes scanned the crowd, mostly ignoring the colorful displays of holographic advertisements floating midair. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Lyra moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost unnatural, her limbs longer than a human's, her skin a soft violet with a faint luminescence that shifted with the light. Her eyes were large, almond-shaped, and a striking shade of amber. She had a presence that seemed to bend the space around her, making her stand out even in a place this chaotic. But what caught Ethan's attention wasn't just her appearance. It was the small floating bag spinning erratically above her head. It was trapped in the gravity grid, bouncing off invisible lines of force, unable to fall or fly. She reached for it, but her movements were precise, almost too delicate, as if she were unsure whether touching it would trigger some hidden mechanism. Ethan noticed the tension in her fingers, the slight flare of frustration in her eyes. Without thinking, he stepped closer. "Do you need help with that?" he asked. The alien woman glanced at him. For a moment, Ethan thought she might ignore him or worse, react defensively. But then she gave a small nod, her lips curving into a tight, polite smile. "Yes, please." "It has become difficult to manage." Her voice was melodic, but the words carried a weight that made him pause. It wasn't just a matter of speaking another language. There was something in the rhythm of her speech, a subtle authority that made him instinctively want to assist. Ethan reached out, trying to grasp the bag as it spun closer. The gravity grid made it tricky. One wrong move and it could shoot off in an unpredictable direction. He concentrated, timing his movements carefully. When his fingers finally touched it, he felt a slight shock as the magnetic field of the grid tugged against him. He gritted his teeth and held on, steadying the bag until it floated into his hands. Lyra watched him carefully, her amber eyes narrowing ever so slightly, as if calculating something. Then she tilted her head and whispered, "Thank you. Few are willing to assist strangers these days." A strange quiet settled over the area, unusual for a station as noisy as Aurora. Ethan felt it in his chest, a subtle tension like the calm before a storm. When Lyra finally spoke again, her tone was lighter, almost teasing. "Few indeed." She took the bag from him, holding it close. "Perhaps I owe you a small favor in return." "No need for favors." Before he could say anything more, Lyra's gaze shifted to the crowd. Her posture changed, more alert, almost as if she were scanning for something or someone. The slight tension in her shoulders, the flicker of her eyes, suggested that this moment, their encounter, might not have been entirely accidental. Yet she turned back to him and gave a small nod. "I must go. But be careful in your travels, human." He shook his head and muttered, "Strange encounter," before moving on, trying to ignore the lingering unease in his chest. For the next few days, Ethan found himself thinking about her more than he wanted to admit. He returned to his usual routines, engineering work on cargo ships, minor repairs, and maintenance, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Small coincidences began to occur, at first so subtle he almost ignored them. A promotion at work that arrived earlier than expected, a repair contract opening at a station just as he arrived, and even small personal wins like finding a missing tool or avoiding minor accidents. Each time he laughed it off as luck, yet deep down, he wondered if it was more than that. One evening, while checking the systems of a freighter docked at Aurora, Ethan felt a presence behind him. He turned quickly, expecting a colleague, but the corridor was empty. The hum of the station's engines filled the silence. Then he noticed a small slip of paper tucked under the console. Curious, he picked it up. Written in neat, precise symbols was a single line, "Not all who help are free of consequence." Ethan tried to push the thought away, telling himself it was a prank, perhaps left by a fellow engineer with a flair for the dramatic. Yet when he went to bed that night, sleep did not come easily. The words echoed in his mind, "Not all who help are free of consequence." He thought of Lyra, her amber eyes, and the subtle weight of her presence. Something told him that helping her had set in motion events far beyond a simple act of kindness. The next day, as he navigated the docking bay, he noticed subtle changes. People moved differently around him, almost as if space itself adjusted to his path. A supply droid, normally sluggish, zipped past to deliver a critical component right as he needed it. Another engineer bumped into him, not in a harmful way, but in a manner that redirected his course to avoid a falling crate. Each incident was small, almost imperceptible, yet together they formed a pattern. Ethan realized with growing unease that someone, or something, was watching over him, guiding events in ways he could not predict. He returned to the spot where he had first helped Lyra, hoping for answers, but the area was empty. The gravity grids hummed as usual, ships docked and departed in a continuous rhythm, and alien merchants called out their wares. Nothing appeared out of place. And yet Ethan felt it, an invisible thread, pulling him along a path he did not choose, a path that seemed tied to the alien woman he had met only once. Days turned into a week, and the subtle influence became more noticeable. Ethan's work improved in unexpected ways. Solutions to complex engineering problems came to him in flashes, almost as if someone whispered the answers into his mind. Opportunities appeared at his door, but each one carried hidden risks, situations where a single mistake could mean disaster. He realized that this wasn't luck, this was control. Someone was shaping his journey, steering him toward unknown destinations. And then, one evening, as he worked late in the quiet hum of the station, he finally saw her. Lyra appeared at the end of the corridor, her violet skin glowing softly under the artificial lights. She didn't speak at first, simply observing him with those piercing amber eyes. Ethan froze, unsure whether to greet her, flee, or confront her. "You see it, do you not?" she asked, her voice calm, yet carrying the weight of authority. "The threads I have woven around you. The paths you take, the choices you believe are your own, they are not entirely so." He was an engineer, a man of logic and systems, yet he had never encountered a problem like this. This was not a machine to fix, nor a circuit to repair. This was a web of influence, of fate, controlled by an intelligence far beyond his own. And yet, he felt a spark of determination. He may be guided, but he would not be passive. For the first time, he looked at Lyra not just as a mysterious stranger, but as a challenge. Not just to his safety or his comfort, but to his very autonomy. Ethan realized that his human ingenuity, resilience, and what would be the only tools he had to navigate the unseen forces now shaping his life. Lyra's eyes seemed to read his thoughts, and a faint smile curved her lips. "Interesting," she murmured. "Perhaps humanity is not as easily guided as I assumed." The station's corridors, once familiar, now seemed like a maze designed to challenge him. Every step he took felt measured, as if an invisible observer were nudging him toward some unknown destination. It was a sensation both unsettling and oddly exhilarating. He returned to his small quarters aboard the Aurora station, trying to focus on his work. The engine schematics sprawled across the table in front of him, diagrams filled with intricate circuits and energy conduits. Normally, this was where he felt in control, where logic reigned and human skill could overcome any obstacle. But tonight, even the schematics seemed to shift in his mind, lines and connections blurring into new patterns he had not noticed before. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. He tried to convince himself that he was imagining things. Perhaps the encounter with Lyra had left a stronger impression than he realized. Maybe the note he found, "Not all who help are free of consequence," was merely a prank. But when he closed his eyes, the patterns from the schematics appeared again, almost like faint whispers guiding him to see them differently. He sighed and forced himself to concentrate. If this was manipulation, he would need to understand it, to study it carefully. He began recording his observations in a notebook, listing every unusual coincidence over the past week. Promotions at work, narrowly avoided accidents, supply droids arriving at just the right moment. All of it seemed to converge towards something he couldn't name. The next morning, Ethan returned to the docking bays. Aurora Station was alive with activity, as ships of every shape and size arrived and departed. The air smelled faintly of ozone and fuel, mixed with the soft fragrance of alien flowers sold by vendors who had set up stalls along the wide walkways. Humans and aliens moved together in a chaotic rhythm, yet somehow Ethan felt that rhythm had changed for him. As he walked, he noticed small incidents that drew his attention. A loose cable dangled above a maintenance corridor, about to snap under the weight of a hovering cargo crate. Ethan instinctively ducked and pushed a nearby engineer out of the way. The crate crashed behind them, sending sparks flying. No one was hurt. He paused, catching his breath, and glanced around. It was just a minor accident, yet the timing felt uncanny, almost as if he had been directed to act at the precise moment. Later, while checking the propulsion system of a freighter, Ethan felt the same subtle pull guiding him. He could not explain it, but it was as though the station itself conspired to place him exactly where he needed to be. He tested the feeling, intentionally taking a longer route through the corridors, changing the order of his tasks. To his surprise, the guidance persisted. He could almost see the invisible thread leading him forward, suggesting paths he hadn't considered, choices he might not have made. By the third day, the influence became more pronounced. He discovered a complex wiring error on a critical ship engine, one that could have caused a serious malfunction during flight. Normally, he might have missed it, but something in his mind highlighted the anomaly. He corrected it just in time, preventing what could have been a major disaster. He was beginning to realize that this invisible influence wasn't always convenient. It tested him, pushed him to act, and often placed him in situations that required immediate problem-solving under pressure. Ethan knew one thing. If someone or something was orchestrating these events, they were intelligent and patient. He could not afford to act recklessly. Each coincidence, each small miracle or narrowly avoided accident was not random. It was a carefully guided experiment, and he was the subject. He decided to gather more evidence. Using a small drone, he began mapping the corridors and recording movements in the docking bay. At first, the footage showed nothing unusual, people going about their business, machines moving as expected. But when he reviewed it closely, he noticed subtle anomalies. Devices slightly adjusting themselves, holographic ads flickering in patterns that seemed almost like signals, and shadows that moved differently than the source of light should have allowed. Ethan's mind raced. If this was Lyra, then she wasn't just an ordinary alien. She was capable of controlling or influencing technology and events at a distance, perhaps manipulating probability itself. And yet, she hadn't confronted him again. She was observing, waiting to see how he would respond to the subtle tests she had placed in his path. That evening, as Ethan prepared to leave the engineering bay, the hum of the station seemed to deepen, vibrating through his chest. His communicator beeped with a message: "Meet me at Dock 7, midnight, come alone." But another part, the part that had been trained to face challenges and solve problems, pushed him forward. He knew he couldn't avoid this encounter. If he wanted to understand the invisible force guiding him, he had to confront it directly. At midnight, the docking bay was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of overhead lights and the faint luminescence of ships docked along the platforms. Ethan moved carefully, every sense alert. He could feel the weight of the station around him, as though it too waited for the meeting to begin. Then, from the shadows, she appeared. Lyra stepped forward, her violet skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She carried herself with the same grace and authority that had marked their first encounter. But now, Ethan could sense something different. She wasn't just observing, she was testing. Every movement, every subtle gesture seemed designed to challenge him. "You came," she said, her voice calm but edged with curiosity. "I wondered if you would follow the thread." "What do you want from me?" "So all of this, the promotions, the accidents, the timing of everything, it was you." "I didn't sign up for this." "Tested how?" "But the environment around you, the events you encounter are influenced. It is up to you how you respond. That is the true test." For hours, they talked. Lyra explained that the galaxy was a network of interwoven destinies, and that some individuals like her had the ability to subtly influence outcomes. She described scenarios where entire star systems had been altered by the smallest decisions, and she hinted that humans, in their unpredictability, could resist even the most precise manipulation. Ethan listened intently, absorbing every word. He realized that this was more than an encounter, it was a lesson. He was being shown the power of choice, the weight of action, and the necessity of resilience. When the first light of dawn touched the docking bay, Lyra stepped back. "You will encounter more tests," she said. "Some subtle, some obvious. Remember, observe, adapt, and act. That is how you navigate influence without losing yourself." As Lyra disappeared into the morning crowd, Ethan stood alone in the docking bay. The hum of the station filled the silence, familiar yet somehow transformed. He felt a strange sense of clarity. He had been challenged, tested, and exposed to forces beyond his understanding, but he also felt ready. The path ahead was uncertain, the threads of fate tangled and complex. But Ethan knew one thing: he would not simply follow. He would observe, decide, and act. And in doing so, he would prove not only to Lyra but to the galaxy itself that humans were capable of navigating even the most carefully controlled destinies with courage and brilliance. He took a deep breath and walked forward, ready to face whatever came next. Ethan woke to the soft hum of Aurora Station. It had become a familiar sound over the past week, a background rhythm that pulsed through the metal walls and decks. But this morning, the hum felt heavier, almost deliberate. He rubbed his eyes and tried to focus on the day ahead. Ever since his midnight encounter with Lyra, he had felt a strange pull towards certain tasks, corridors, and even people. He began his morning routine mechanically, checking his equipment and reviewing ship schematics. Yet, as he adjusted a panel on a cargo freighter, he noticed a small anomaly, a component slightly misaligned, something his eyes had never caught before. Normally, it would have seemed insignificant, but instinctively he corrected it. Almost immediately, a low alarm sounded from the ship's system, warning of a potential power surge. By acting on that small detail, he had prevented a major malfunction. Ethan leaned against the hull, exhaling slowly. The invisible thread guiding him was becoming more obvious. It wasn't just coincidences anymore, it was precision. Someone or something was orchestrating events around him. And he realized he needed to understand the rules of this influence if he wanted to survive what was coming. Later, he made his way to the central docking bay, where freighters and transport ships were constantly moving in and out. The bay was busier than ever, with aliens of every shape and size negotiating contracts, technicians hustling to maintain ships, and humans rushing to keep pace. Ethan's senses were on high alert. Every movement, every shadow, every flicker of light seemed significant. A commotion caught his attention near Dock 12. A cargo drone had malfunctioned, spinning out of control and threatening to collide with a group of workers. Ethan didn't think. He sprinted toward the scene, dodging a fallen crate and grabbing a loose cable to redirect the drone. His hands moved quickly, instincts guiding him as he stabilized the device. The workers cheered, but Ethan barely noticed them. He was aware of a subtle presence behind him, a sense that someone somewhere was observing his response. When the chaos subsided, he turned to see Lyra standing at the edge of the bay. Her violet skin glowed softly, and her amber eyes were fixed on him. She didn't move closer, she merely watched, as if cataloging every decision, every movement he made. "You are learning quickly," she said, her voice carrying easily across the hum of the station. "Most humans would have panicked or waited for assistance. It's just different when you feel watched, when everything seems controlled. Your reactions, your decisions, your creativity, they are under observation. The universe, in small ways, wants to see how humans respond to pressure. But in your case, it may be more complicated." She turned and glided away, her movements fluid and deliberate, leaving Ethan with a sense of urgency he could not ignore. He decided to push the boundaries of the influence. If Lyra was testing him, he would test the test. Over the next few days, Ethan deliberately altered his routes, took detours, and made decisions contrary to what he thought the guidance wanted. Each time he felt the invisible thread tug, attempting to nudge him back to the intended path. Yet he resisted. One afternoon, while inspecting a newly arrived freighter, he noticed a pattern in the anomalies he had been encountering. Small errors in systems, misaligned components, unusual behavior of drones. It all pointed to a deliberate design, a hidden structure behind the randomness. He realized that Lyra's influence wasn't just guiding him physically. It was creating challenges that required his ingenuity to overcome. Determined to understand more, Ethan began experimenting with predictive actions. He predicted when a malfunction might occur, where a floating cargo container might drift, even how a worker might react under pressure. Most of his predictions were correct, reinforcing his belief that the environment was influenced. But then something unexpected happened. A minor explosion occurred near the fuel storage bay, a reaction he had not anticipated. Sparks flew and a plume of smoke rose, sending nearby workers scrambling for safety. Ethan's heart raced as he assessed the situation. His mind raced for solutions, and in that instant, instinct took over. He grabbed a nearby fire suppression nozzle and directed the suppressant toward the source, containing the fire before it could spread. Lyra appeared at the edge of the smoke, her eyes widening slightly in approval. "Impressive," she said. "You are not only observing, you are adapting. Humans do not always follow patterns, they innovate. Even when guided, your choices can defy expectation." He realized that the challenges she set were becoming more dangerous, more complex, testing not just his skills but his courage and judgment. The following morning, he decided to take proactive steps. He visited the station's central library, a vast repository of knowledge spanning human and alien civilizations. He began researching species known for influence and manipulation, patterns of probability control, and advanced alien technology. Each text he studied hinted at possibilities he could scarcely imagine, yet each also confirmed one truth. Humans, with their ingenuity and adaptability, were uniquely capable of navigating such complex systems. As he left the library carrying a stack of data pads, he noticed a faint glimmer at the edge of the walkway. A small drone, seemingly ordinary, hovered in place, following him at a distance. He paused and observed it. Its movements were deliberate, matching his pace and direction. He extended a hand, and it darted closer, almost as if acknowledging his awareness. Ethan smiled. If this was part of the influence, he could play along. Over the next few days, he began testing patterns in the environment, predicting where drones might appear, how machinery might malfunction, and how minor accidents could be prevented. Each time, his understanding grew. He realized that Lyra's influence, while powerful, was not absolute. Human observation, intuition, and adaptability could counterbalance the subtle nudges guiding him. One evening, as he worked late in the propulsion bay, the station's lights flickered. A sudden surge of energy caused several panels to spark dangerously. Ethan sprang into action, recalling the methods he had devised for such situations. He stabilized the panels, rerouted power, and prevented a major electrical failure. The adrenaline surged through him, sharp and intoxicating. From the shadows, Lyra watched. Her amber eyes glimmered with satisfaction. "You are learning faster than expected," she said softly. "Most humans would have panicked or followed the path I intended without question. You are remarkable. That is the essence of your kind." The next challenge arrived sooner than he expected. A shipment of volatile chemicals was being transported through the station. A miscalculation in the gravity grid caused containers to drift dangerously close to a populated area. Ethan noticed the drift just in time, his heart pounding. He raced to redirect the containers using a combination of magnetic clamps and careful timing. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and nearby workers scrambled. The danger was immense, and for a moment he feared he might fail. But he didn't. His mind, honed by the weeks of subtle tests and crises, guided his hands. He stabilized the shipment, preventing disaster. As the last container settled safely, he leaned against a railing, breathing heavily, sweat running down his face. Lyra appeared beside him, silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice calm but firm. "You have faced real danger now, Ethan. Not the minor anomalies, not the small accidents, but true risk. And you have survived. That is impressive. Because I trust myself, even when the odds are against me." He had begun as a man guided by unseen threads, but now he was learning to navigate them on his own terms. The challenges were far from over, but he felt ready. Each test had taught him something valuable, not just about Lyra's influence, but about the strength, creativity, and resilience inherent in humanity. As the station settled into its usual rhythm, Ethan walked through the corridors, alert but confident. He had learned to read the patterns, anticipate the anomalies, and act decisively. The invisible thread was still there, tugging at him, but it no longer controlled him. He had become a participant in his own destiny, guided but not bound. Lyra, watching from the shadows, nodded to herself. The human was proving worthy, not as a pawn, but as a being capable of shaping his own path. The true test had only begun, and she was eager to see how far his ingenuity and courage could take him. Ethan's heart raced with anticipation. He did not know what lay ahead, but he understood one fundamental truth. Humans, when faced with influence, danger, and uncertainty, could rise above expectations. He was ready to meet whatever challenge came next, armed with skill, determination, and the unyielding spirit that defined his species. And somewhere deep within the station, an invisible force watched, tested, and acknowledged the remarkable adaptability of a human being. Ethan felt a weight in the pit of his stomach as he moved through Aurora Station that morning. For the past week, he had grown more confident, more skilled at reading the subtle patterns guiding him. He had learned to anticipate the anomalies, predict minor crises, and even manipulate small variables to his advantage. Yet today felt different. The hum of the station vibrated with a tension he could not ignore, as if the entire structure was holding its breath. He tightened the straps of his bag, carrying tools and data pads, and kept his eyes sharp. Even in the familiar corridors, shadows seemed sharper, lights flickered with unusual rhythm, and distant alarms hummed with barely noticeable irregularity. Ethan knew that the challenges were escalating. Lyra's influence was no longer subtle. She was testing him in a way that would require not just skill, but courage, strategy, and split-second decision-making. He arrived at the engineering bay, where a shipment of experimental reactor cores had been delivered. The cores were delicate, highly volatile, and prone to destabilization if handled incorrectly. Normally, routine inspections would suffice. But as he stepped closer, Ethan noticed something off, a subtle imbalance in the energy readings. The indicators flickered in a way that suggested the cores had been tampered with, or at least influenced in a manner beyond standard malfunction. His heart quickened. This was the type of challenge Lyra had been building toward. The invisible thread that had guided him through minor incidents now loomed larger, almost like a weight pressing against his chest. Ethan adjusted his tools and activated the protective harnesses, preparing for what could become a dangerous situation. As he examined the first core, a sudden jolt of energy surged through the bay. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the reactor began to destabilize. Ethan reacted instantly, using his knowledge and intuition to stabilize the energy output. He rerouted power, adjusted magnetic containment fields, and managed to prevent a catastrophic chain reaction. Yet even as he worked, he sensed Lyra's presence, observing from a distance, her amber eyes following his every move. "You are fast," she said from the shadows, her voice carrying across the bay with calm authority. "But speed alone will not be enough today." He had handled small anomalies, unexpected accidents, and minor chaos. But a test designed to deliberately push him to the edge was something else entirely. He squared his shoulders and took a deep breath. Humans adapted under pressure. Humans improvised when the odds were against them. He would need every ounce of ingenuity, focus, and courage he possessed. The first challenge arrived within moments. One of the reactor cores began to levitate uncontrollably, defying magnetic containment, and moving toward a row of energy conduits that could amplify its instability into a massive explosion. Ethan calculated the trajectory in his mind, then grabbed a magnetic stabilization tool. Sparks flew as he extended the field around the core, slowly guiding it back to safety. Every second counted, and he could feel the invisible tug of influence trying to redirect his efforts. He ignored it, focusing solely on the task at hand. Lyra observed silently, her amber eyes tracking his every decision. "You are resisting the guidance," she murmured, almost to herself. "Interesting. Humans do not always follow the path intended for them. They carve their own way, even under pressure." Ethan knew he had to act quickly. He analyzed the resonance patterns, adjusted the damping controls, and stabilized the energy output. His hands moved instinctively, a combination of training, observation, and human intuition guiding him. Even as he worked, another anomaly occurred. A nearby maintenance drone, influenced by the same energy fluctuations, went rogue, spinning toward the reactor cores with deadly speed. Ethan calculated the trajectory in a fraction of a second and deployed a containment net, trapping the drone before it could cause damage. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins, sharpening his senses and forcing his mind into a heightened state of awareness. Lyra stepped closer, her movements deliberate and controlled. "Most humans would have panicked by now. You are exceptional." The energy readings were unstable, fluctuating in unpredictable patterns. He realized that this core was not malfunctioning randomly. It was being manipulated, influenced directly to test his judgment, reaction, and adaptability. The invisible thread tugged insistently, trying to steer him in a particular direction, but Ethan refused to follow it blindly. He relied on observation, analysis, and instinct. As he worked, he noticed a subtle pattern in the energy fluctuations. They formed a rhythm, almost like a code, a sequence he could predict and counter. Ethan adjusted the containment fields in synchronization with the rhythm, gradually stabilizing the core. Sparks and vibrations subsided, and the energy readings returned to normal. He exhaled deeply, realizing that he had successfully navigated the direct manipulation for the first time. Lyra's eyes glimmered with respect. "You are learning faster than I anticipated. Humans, they are not easily controlled. Even when the environment is shaped to guide them, they find a way to act independently. I make my own choices." Lyra had hinted that more challenges would come, each designed to push him further, to test not only his skill but his resilience and judgment under extreme conditions. He realized that he had only scratched the surface of what the influence could do, and that the stakes would continue to rise. Over the next few hours, Ethan worked tirelessly, monitoring systems, adjusting machinery, and preparing for potential anomalies. The experience had sharpened his perception, teaching him to anticipate manipulation and act decisively. He began to understand that Lyra's influence, while formidable, was also an opportunity, a way to refine his skills, test his limits, and demonstrate the resilience and adaptability that defined humanity. Later, as he rested in a quiet corridor, he reflected on the events of the day. Every challenge had tested him physically, mentally, and emotionally. Yet he had emerged stronger, more capable, and more confident in his ability to navigate the unseen forces shaping his life. He realized that human ingenuity was not merely a matter of intelligence or skill. It was a combination of creativity, resilience, adaptability, and the willingness to act in the face of uncertainty. As he considered his progress, a sudden alert flashed across his communicator, an emergency in the station's upper docking bay. A freighter had lost power in the gravity grid, and its cargo was drifting dangerously toward a populated area. Ethan's heart raced, but he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his tools and sprinted toward the upper bay, his mind calculating every possible scenario. When he arrived, the scene was chaotic. Cargo containers floated erratically, sparks flew from damaged systems, and workers scrambled for safety. Ethan assessed the situation quickly, identifying the best course of action. He deployed magnetic stabilizers, rerouted power to critical systems, and coordinated with nearby workers to secure the floating cargo. Every decision had to be precise, every movement calculated. Failure could result in disaster. Despite the pressure, Ethan remained calm. He relied on his training, his intuition, and the lessons he had learned from Lyra's subtle guidance. Slowly, carefully, he brought the situation under control. The cargo stabilized, systems returned to normal, and the workers breathed sighs of relief. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline and accomplishment. Lyra appeared beside him, her expression unreadable. "You have faced direct manipulation, extreme danger, and complex challenges today," she said. "And yet you have succeeded. Your ability to act decisively, adapt, and innovate is impressive." "I didn't succeed because of you or your influence. I succeeded because humans don't give up. We find solutions even when the odds are against us. That's who we are. You have shown courage, ingenuity, and resilience. You have exceeded expectations." He realized that the path ahead would be difficult, filled with tests and trials, but he was no longer intimidated. He was ready. As he walked through the station, Lyra watched from a distance, her eyes following him with quiet approval. The human had faced direct manipulation, responded with ingenuity, and emerged stronger. The final tests were approaching, and she was eager to see how far his skill, courage, and human spirit could carry him. Ethan's mind was clear. He had learned to navigate influence, face danger, and make independent choices under pressure. The path ahead was uncertain, but he felt ready to meet whatever challenges awaited him. Human ingenuity, determination, and resilience had brought him this far, and they would carry him forward. The station hummed with life around him, but Ethan moved with purpose. He was no longer a passive participant in the invisible forces at play. He was an active agent in his own destiny, capable of shaping outcomes, defying expectation, and proving that humanity could rise above manipulation and adversity. And somewhere deep within Aurora Station, an observer watched with quiet satisfaction, acknowledging the remarkable adaptability and courage of a human being. Ethan felt the station hum beneath his feet, the familiar vibrations now a rhythm he could almost predict. The past weeks had changed him. He had faced anomalies, accidents, and direct manipulations, each challenge pushing his mind, body, and instincts to the limit. He had learned to observe, adapt, and act decisively, and now he knew that the ultimate test awaited him. He walked through the central docking bay with purpose, carrying his tools and a small kit of improvised devices he had been preparing for this very moment. He knew Lyra would be waiting, watching, ready to challenge him in a way that would leave no room for error. His heartbeat was steady, not from fear but from focus. This was his opportunity to prove not just his skill, but the strength of human ingenuity and resilience. The bay was eerily quiet. Ships were docked and humming engines vibrated softly, but there was no movement in the walkways. Ethan's eyes scanned every corner, every shadow. Then from the edge of the bay, Lyra emerged, her violet skin glowing faintly under the station lights, her amber eyes fixed on him. She carried herself with the same calm authority, but there was something different now, a tension, a challenge. "You have learned much," she said, her voice steady. "You have adapted, resisted subtle influence, and acted decisively under pressure. But the final test is not just about skill or observation. It is about your judgment, courage, and understanding of choice itself. I've learned enough to handle whatever you throw at me." "This freighter contains a series of volatile reactors," Lyra explained. "They have been intentionally destabilized to test your ability to make decisions under extreme risk. You must stabilize them and ensure the safety of the crew and the station. Failure could be catastrophic." He had faced chaos before, and he knew that fear would only slow him down. He approached the freighter, carefully analyzing the data streaming from his portable scanner. The energy readings were highly irregular, fluctuating in ways that suggested both technical and deliberate interference. He opened the maintenance hatch, the metallic clang echoing through the empty bay. Inside, the freighter was tense with potential energy, every reactor core humming in a delicate balance. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the energy could cascade into disaster. Ethan took a deep breath and began his work. He started by isolating the most unstable core, using magnetic stabilizers to slow its erratic movements. Sparks flew as he adjusted containment fields, rerouted power, and synchronized energy flows. Every action required precision, and every decision mattered. He could feel the tug of influence, subtle nudges trying to guide him toward the correct sequence, but he ignored them. His mind relied on observation, instinct, and human ingenuity rather than blind obedience. Suddenly, the second reactor core began to pulse violently, destabilizing faster than he had anticipated. Ethan recalculated, rerouting auxiliary power and manually adjusting containment fields. The core's vibrations increased, sending sparks and energy arcs flying across the room. He ducked and rolled to avoid a surge, then leapt toward the control panel, overriding the automated systems to stabilize the energy flow. Lyra watched silently from the walkway above, her amber eyes narrowing with focus. "Most would have panicked by now," she murmured. "But he adapts, he improvises, he understands choice." One by one, he stabilized the cores, working in tandem with the subtle feedback he observed from the fluctuating energy patterns. Each core required a different approach. One demanded precision timing, another demanded rerouting of power under extreme pressure, and yet another required predicting its next movement before it happened. It was chaos, but chaos he had learned to navigate. As he stabilized the last core, an unexpected challenge arose. The freighter's gravity systems malfunctioned, causing the reactor cores to float erratically, spinning toward the hull walls. Ethan realized that the station itself had been manipulated to test not only his technical skills, but his adaptability under changing physical conditions. He quickly attached magnetic clamps to the cores, using them as temporary anchors, then manually recalibrated the containment fields to restore stability. Every move had to be calculated perfectly, yet his intuition guided him with the speed and precision of instinct. Sweat ran down his face, his muscles burned, but he refused to stop. The lives of the crew and the safety of the station depended on him. This was no longer a test of subtle influence. It was a challenge that required full engagement, full control, and full courage. Lyra descended the walkway, approaching the freighter. "You have handled the technical challenges," she said, "but the final decision is yours. You must choose, stabilize the freighter completely at great personal risk, or evacuate the crew and let the reactors destabilize. There is no right answer dictated by influence. Only your choice matters." He could feel the pressure of the invisible thread, the subtle nudges pushing him toward evacuation, toward safety. But he realized something vital. He was not a pawn. He had learned to navigate influence, to make choices independently. This was the moment to prove it. He glanced at the reactors, noting the patterns in their fluctuations. He understood how each core interacted with the others, how energy flowed and shifted. He calculated the risk, adjusted his plan, and made his decision. He would stabilize the freighter. He would act decisively, relying on skill, judgment, and human ingenuity rather than external guidance. Ethan moved quickly, implementing his plan. He synchronized the magnetic clamps, rerouted power, and manually adjusted the containment fields with incredible precision. Sparks flew, Alarms screamed, and the hum of the freighter rose to a high-pitched pitch that made concentration difficult. Yet Ethan remained focused, every movement deliberate, every calculation precise. As the last adjustment was made, the freighter's energy readings stabilized. The hum returned to a steady, safe rhythm. The reactors were secure. The crew, who had been watching from a safe distance, erupted in relief and applause. Ethan stood, exhausted but triumphant, knowing he had made the choice, faced the risk, and succeeded entirely on his own terms. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing with admiration. "You have done more than succeed," she said. "You have proven the essence of humanity. You faced influence, danger, and uncertainty, yet you acted independently with courage, ingenuity, and wisdom. You have exceeded even my expectations." "I did it because it had to be done. Humans don't just survive, they solve problems even when the odds are against them. That's who we are. You have proven that humanity is capable of navigating even the most carefully controlled destinies with resilience and brilliance." He had faced manipulation, direct danger, and impossible challenges, and he had succeeded through his own skill, judgment, and determination. As the crew secured the freighter, Ethan glanced at Lyra. "So what now?" he asked. She smiled faintly, a mixture of respect and curiosity in her amber eyes. "Now you continue your path. You have learned that humans are not easily guided, and that choice, ingenuity, and courage define your species. You have proven your independence, and with it, your value. The future is yours to navigate." He understood now that his journey was far from over, but he also knew something profound. Humanity, in its resilience, creativity, and determination, could face challenges beyond imagination and emerge victorious. The invisible threads could influence, manipulate, and test, but they could never dictate choice. That was the essence of human strength. He walked through the docking bay, feeling the hum of Aurora Station beneath his feet, but now it was a familiar, welcoming rhythm. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with potential danger and opportunity, but he felt ready. He had faced the ultimate test, confronted manipulation directly, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Lyra watched from the shadows one last time, her expression one of quiet approval. The human had not only succeeded, but had proven that even under influence, humans could navigate their destiny with ingenuity, courage, and unyielding resolve. She stepped back, letting him walk forward, knowing that he would continue to thrive, learn, and shape his own path in the galaxy. Ethan moved forward, carrying the lessons of the past weeks with him. The challenges had taught him more than technical skills. They had revealed the power of human choice, the importance of courage, and the brilliance of ingenuity. No influence, no manipulation, no challenge could take that away. As he exited the docking bay and stepped into the bustling corridors of Aurora Station, he felt a profound sense of clarity. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries and dangers, but humanity had proven time and again that it could rise to meet the unknown. And he, a single human among countless stars, had proven that even in the face of subtle manipulation and extreme risk, choice, ingenuity, and courage would define his destiny. He smiled faintly, thinking of the first day he had helped Lyra retrieve her bag. A small act of kindness had set him on this path, but it was his choices, his ingenuity, and his resolve that had brought him through. Humanity was remarkable, not because of guidance or luck, but because of its unyielding ability to face challenges and shape its own destiny. The station buzzed around him, full of life, commerce, and motion. Ethan felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that humans were capable of extraordinary things when they acted with courage, creativity, and purpose. The invisible threads of influence could test him, challenge him, and push him to his limits, but they could never control him. And somewhere high above in the observation deck, Lyra watched quietly, a faint smile on her lips. The human had triumphed not because of guidance or manipulation, but because of choice, the defining trait of humanity. The final test had proven it. Ethan walked forward, carrying not just tools and knowledge, but a deeper understanding of what it meant to be human. He was independent, capable, and resilient, and in a galaxy of unknown forces, that was the greatest strength of all.